Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Alex. Welcome back to Gray Area. We are here today with producer DJ Roseringed. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing good, actually, in my studio. I worked on some. Let me close this down for a second. I worked on a new track I made yesterday with some vocals.
Writing an album is supposed to take a long time because it's a cohesive work and it's supposed to be a representation of everything that you can do. So taking 3 years doesn't sound like too long. Do you have like an end date on that?
Yeah, so to me, like I have like one opportunity each year, which is the 14th of July, which is the birthday of my mom. I'm writing it for her.
Okay.
And she passed away when I was younger. So every year I want to release it on her birthday, of course. And because it's in summer and it's a beautiful time of the year. And now I'm focusing on trying to do it next year. But it's every time I'm like in January, February, I already know if I'm gonna make it, because it has to be like finished, I think, by March or something.
Right.
If you want to press it on vinyl, I have to even finish it earlier because there's so long waiting times. But I'm not gonna rush it. I like kind of like I can rush stuff like EPs and stuff. Like I have to get it done by then, but my album, I have to tell myself, you don't have to rush. There's no rush. It's a really big personal project, and like you said, it's not crazy that you do a lot of years before you put it out there.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned your mom, and so sorry to hear that she passed away, but I want to talk about your parents for a second.
Yeah.
Both of them were artists. Your mom was a ballerina. Your dad was also a musician.
No. My dad was not a musician.
Your dad was like a fan.
Yeah. He used to. Yeah, when he was getting older, when he used to, when he was in his 40s, he used to listen to a lot of dance music, and he brought us to Ibiza. And then he bought like all these illegal. There were at those times the guys who sell sunglasses now and stuff.
Yeah.
They used to sell CDs because that was cool at that time. And then I got all these trance CDs actually. And but my dad was not a musician.
Okay. Well, he was a music fan, and it sounds like your parents had a lot to do with your love for the arts, and that kind of puts you a step ahead of everybody as a creative. How did their passion for music and movement rub off on you?
I think mostly my mom, because she was a ballerina dancer and she liked music a lot, and she played like different kind of jazz music when I was younger, like El Giro. I know like Rose Garden used to be like one of her favorite songs. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah,
it's and there was music like that, George Michael, through the house all the time. And when Discmans came out, my dad used to give me one with the CD of Queen Greatest Hits. So actually the first CD album which I listened to a million times was that one, and Bohemian Rhapsody especially, which is crazy to me later in life. If I then like in the Netherlands, like it is like the #1 song of the top 500 they do every year. It's always Bohemian Rhapsody almost all of the time, and in a lot of countries. Yeah, so I'm pretty amazed like that song used to be such a big influence when I was really young, and that it actually was recognized. I didn't know by then it was popular. It was just because so much stuff happens in that track, like a gong at the end.
Yeah,
I know it by head. Yeah,
it's such a complex song. And your music is a bit complex as well. And dance music tends to be a little bit on the safer side in that regard. Where does that complexity come from?
Yeah, so I think it's a funny thing that I'm actually realizing it now, that the Bohemian Rhapsody is indeed like really complex, and there's a lot of elements in there.
Yeah.
And I tend to do this. I tend to do the same. I used to do the same a little bit more. I try to cut it down a little bit more to be a little bit more to the point with one ID. So I used to have like 4 or 5 IDs, which are all hooks.
Right.
And then I put them in every track. Like I put all the hooks in one track. So if you listen to Out of Sync, the track, which is from 2 years ago, there's like so many elements. It could be a track on its own, and it's 9 minutes long. To me, that's just, if I would listen to such a song, to me, it would amaze me, because I get bored, probably too fast when something is too repetitive.
Right.
And also because I always start from harmonies and melodies. That's my core, like for every song. Actually, like chord progressions is the start for me.
Yeah.
And from that on, I just write down IDs. Sometimes that for me as an artist, the biggest thing that I've learned and still have a hard time doing, but getting better at it, is killing your darlings, which is to a lot of artists one of the biggest learnings, I think, is knowing like which elements is most important and make the track around that, and not put every ID in there. But I'm also a little bit about breaking the rules sometimes. So it's, as long as you feel the track and it has a message in there, to me, there could be multiple IDs in there. But it's never on purpose. I never try to rationalize, like it has to be complex, it has to be difficult. It's just that sometimes I just like so many elements so much, and I just cannot get them out. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting you say that too, because it's important as a producer to learn when it's okay to take things away, and it can be hard to do that sometimes. It can be hard to say that, to be listening to something and be like, you know what, that element's not working for this. Maybe it's just time to hit the delete button on it.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. But every time I took like a masterclass or anything, at one time Frank Wiedemann, which is part of AM, he described it so beautiful. Like, you worked on this element so long, and it feels like your baby. You know, you don't want to lose that thing. And also Chet Faker mentioned it in a podcast. So for many artists, I think it's a well-known thing. And I think it has a lot to do with like killing your ego, because you're like, I've put so much time in this, and if I have to delete it, that means like I've put so much time in something which didn't work. So am I bad? Am I a bad producer or something? But if you just let all that thinking out and just delete it, you know,
it's gone. It's done.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. Your ego is not hurt. It's only yourself telling that. Yeah.
I want to jump back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that your dad took you went to Ibiza when you were a kid.
Yeah, I was I think 12, 13, 14 or something. Yeah, in my teenage. Yeah.
So you were really young, so you probably didn't go to a lot of clubs at the time, but how do you think like having that early kind of experience, being in such close proximity with one of the dance music hubs of the world, played into you falling into love with dance music later?
Yeah, it's actually it sounds kind of cheesy, but already by then I found like on the island there's this certain vibe, a certain atmosphere I could already feel as like a young kid. It's like very alive, and there's so many people around having good times, and I noticed it a little already by then. Just like Berlin has a vibe, you know, every city has like, and I really noticed it in Ibiza. And I think it was also the time I always try to like remember like where the first dance tracks I was listening to and stuff, and it's because you're so young, I have no exact clue, but I noticed really particular moment where I was lying on the beach and I was listening to a trance track called Welsh More Fodgely. I don't know how to pronounce it. And I forgot about the artist name, but I can find it easily in Spotify. And I loved the track so much because it was so like fitting. I was looking at the sea on a hot beach, and it fitted the music fitted so much to my surroundings. And that was like one of the first, I think, dance music inspirations. And I always used to listen to dance music or film music. It's pretty weird, but like film music and dance music. So you can hear that back in my music a little.
Absolutely. And when was the first time you got to experience dance music in like a live setting in a club or at a party?
Well, I think, yeah, of course, if you're like 16, 17 and you go out, but then I wasn't into like real house or techno, or we just went out, we drank some beers and we went out. But then when I started studying, I went to my first festivals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I encountered with like where my roommates always told me, yeah, we go to festivals together and it's something we like, and I joined them. I think the first time was at 909 Festival, or Dynamic Festival, one of the two. And
Dynamic is a good one.
yeah, it was a good one. I think David August played then, and he was in his like prime years, and he's still like one of my biggest influences when I was starting out dancing and stuff. But I wasn't that young. You have a lot of artists, and they were already like going to clubs or like DJing when they're like 14 or 15 or 16. But I think I was like 19, 20 when I went to festivals and stuff and really started to submerge myself into dance music.
Nice.
Yeah.
And and had you already started producing at that point?
I started producing pretty quickly after. So like I think I was 20. It started out like there was a guy, we went on a ski trip, and there was a guy who brought a DJ set, and everyone could DJ and stuff, and I was trying it, and I found it pretty yeah, easily to learn. And then I talked with him about it, and he was like, yeah, if you play drums as a kid, it's really more easily to learn because you have the rhythm. And I played drums as a kid, so that's gave me a little bit of confidence, like I can learn this pretty quickly. So the DJing went on pretty quickly. I bought a DJ set, then I bought a vinyl player, which are still behind me, behind the keyboards.
Yeah.
And then I started to mix to vinyl. And then I bought another vinyl player so I could mix vinyl to vinyl, which is the hardest.
Yeah.
And then at one point when I could do that, I was like, all right, I need to produce actually, because that's what it's all about. And then I slowly shifted, like I never DJed at home anymore. I was like only producing, and like everyone else, I think I don't know if everyone else has it, but if you start out producing, you're so amazed by what you do. Like you put sounds in there and you made music that you think it's the bomb.
Yeah.
I can still remember that first track. I really have to find it one time, because I saw some TikToks like people like opening up their first files. And I remember what the track was like, but it's the shittiest track on earth, I think.
Hey, but you know what though? That confidence, even when you're first starting out, is kind of important to the process. Because if you don't feel like, first of all, if you don't love your own music, who else is going to? But second, even early on, you can still almost hear it. Yeah, those tracks may suck, but you can hear like the ideas in there that stick. Like you can see where your style kind of originated from, and like, oh, well, this idea wasn't so bad. The execution was fucking awful, but the idea itself is not bad.
Yeah. There's probably some good ideas in there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about so you've been able to, like, as you progressed, you got better and better, and obviously when you started releasing tracks in 2018, Kolsch played one of your tunes on his BBC Radio 1 residency. And moments like this for new producers are kind of foundational to success, but they don't always mean that you're going to blow up super fast. It doesn't mean that you're like destined for success immediately. How did you like take that moment and turn it into an opportunity for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's how you describe it is perfect what it is, because it's I remember I wasn't doing music full time at that time, so I was at my my previous occupation, and then I was sitting at my laptop and I saw like SoundCloud. I opened it up like I think it was during a job interview. We had someone doing wanted to work with us, and I was like opening up SoundCloud and I saw like 15 comments on the track and was like, holy shit, what's happening? And like the amount of excitement in my body was like huge. It was like, whoa, now I'm gonna blow up, I'm gonna be a big DJ. And then you learn that it's not about that. It's not like one moment that could like skyline or rocket launch you into a career. But as you said, like to me, it gave me the confidence, like if a big DJ, which I always looked up upon, because I loved his music, always still love it, and that he played my track, I was like, if I'm right now able to make something that he thinks is good enough to like play around, I am onto something, you know. It's always to you have to get a little bit nudged into your confidence. Although I do have, I can like discipline myself and have a lot of confidence. Of course, there are like insecure moments and moments like that that help you to make the decision that you're actually capable of making music that's good enough to maybe make a career out of it.
Yeah.
And that's a really strong foundation, like for my decision also later on in life to go full time as a musician.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that you know, it's the stepping stone. It's just like it's a signal like, hey, keep on path and more things like this will come.
Yeah. That's true.
I want to talk about you as a storyteller because what I really love about what you're doing, and I've looked at I went through your Instagram, is that when every time a song comes out, there's always this really finely tuned story behind each song. Like there was a point of inspiration that started in the real world, something that you were feeling, something that you saw, a book that you read, a Malcolm Gladwell book of all things. Like there's all of these like really great stories behind all of your projects, which in dance music is unique because you think of storytelling as more of a singer-songwriter thing or a thing that you see in like hip hop or rock music where there's actual words, but you have a story behind it. Where does that storytelling aspect come from in your music?
Yeah, it's a good remark. I'm really always asking myself when I started out like full time as a musician, like it was in dance music because I used to go to festivals and everything, and I love dance music. And like during the pandemic when I was only producing, I sometimes ask myself also like, you know, what's my real artistic core? Is it like being a dance producer or am I actually a pop producer? Like, because I really like to you know, have a chorus, have a verse, like the structure, tell a story. It has to come from somewhere. But I always realize I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing because I'm like loving dance music so much and I'm loving like storytelling, film music, pop music, and it's like a combination of it.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I'm writing a song and there isn't any story behind it, it even starts when I'm having a project and I'm saving the project. Like the way I save it is like directly the first words that come to mind are going to be the project title.
Right.
And sometimes it switches like a 2 or 3, like, but it's in the first minute of like saving the thing. And I always notice the tracks which don't have a story, I don't have a title. So to me, that already tells it's a nice track, it's a nice idea, but it's not bringing me somewhere. And for me, when there is a story inside of the track, which starts for me with the chord progression most of the time, somehow chord progressions inspire me so much. So I always try to look for a new chord progression. I play piano every morning and trying to find new chord progressions. And if I have a good one, the whole track flows out of it, and I'm actually inspired to finish it. And I also noticed the tracks which have these are my personal best tracks. So I even think lately, like I've been listening to other types of dance music a lot, and then I noticed like how much of those tracks are focused on the groove, like it's sitting in there and like being like hip hop does, like having this really tight thing where it's like grooving all the time, and they like the beat, so like beat makers. And there's a lot of producers, they start out as beat makers. They have loops on their screen and they try to get the loop right, and then they make the track. And somehow that's not how I started. I just started like taking my my like MIDI controllers and making the arrangement live. So for me, the whole loop was like the whole track. And you can notice that in my songs, it's very straightforward, but it's very long, and it's mostly like progressing slowly. So then chords come, bass line has to fit the chords and everything. And I'm trying to tell a story in that way. And I find out that I finish those tracks more easily because to me there is a story behind it, and I get inspired more during the process. And when there's no story behind it and it's just a chill beat, I don't finish the songs. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not motivated to finish those.
Well, I think what you're talking about though is the idea of like tracks versus songs.
Yeah.
And both have their place in music. And people that are beat makers and they can find the groove, that's like a track. That's, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have a rise and fall to it. It's like it does, but it's all based on that groove. And what you're doing is you're writing songs. And that's where
Yeah.
that whole idea of like pop music or other forms of music come into play, like when you're integrating that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And it's really, really I have so much respect for the beat makers, like how they get the groove and everything in there, and it's a real nice thing. But if I look at my own libraries of songs, which are like my favorite of all time, and I always come back to, they're all like written stories. They're really big on chords, melodies, and I also think I kind of am an instrumental person.
Yeah.
I don't dislike vocals, but if I look at the tracks which are hitting me the most, it's ambient music and stuff. So I think that really connects to why I try to tell stories, because I want to create tracks like those tracks which used to hit me so much. An emotional story.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's very clear that you were inspired by the trance of the 90s, which was like that was like my entry into dance music too.
Yeah.
But also, like this sense of euphoria and kind of a sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing correctly.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that plays into the storytelling aspect as well. I want to say another interesting point is you've had some great successes, you've had massive artist support, and you've done this all without releasing on larger labels. All of your music is self-released. The first thing I want to know, is there a reason you went this route? Besides, I understand like maybe in the beginning going that route because you can, you have the ability to, and it's a lot easier to at the beginning because you're like, hey, I just want to get this music out, and sending stuff to labels is awful.
Yeah.
So is there any reason like why you decided to continue doing things this way?
I think there's multiple. The first of all is that I have an entrepreneurial background, so I quit my company before this, starting my full-time artist career. I was doing art production on the side all the time, but when I started out, I was like, yeah, I can start my own label, because what does a label actually do? They take a cut, and then a big cut, and they used to do like huge promotions for you and get you somewhere, but nowadays they don't do as much of the promotions.
Yeah.
And it's more about, in dance music particularly, it's more about being on the label as a cool thing, and it can land you gigs. But as you said, it's pretty hard process to get your music through. And so I thought, like, I have so much tracks that I just want to release, and I want to release them quickly. And then I found like a website that you can do distribution yourself, and there are tons of them nowadays.
Yeah.
And I just started out like that, and I really liked what I learned so much is, if you put it out, there's so many more other artists like that have this experience, but if you put it out there, you grow from the music. Because if you have all these files on your computer, like sitting there for years, and you try to find a label that is releasing it, you have one track out there, and then you notice, no, it's not like really going well. And then you understand when it's out why it's not going well. Because if you're in your studio, in your mind, it's like the best track ever. And then when you put it out and you see the streams are like the judges, they're like literally saying if the track is good or not. And if you put them out yourself, you have so much quicker feedback round. So you put out an EP, you see which one is doing good, and you're like, oh, maybe that one was too busy, maybe I put too much stuff inside of there, as long as you promoted it. Because if it has 10 plays, you would never know. And the second thing I would advocate for doing your own label is it's a psychological reason. Because if you send your stuff out to labels a lot and you don't get replies, or they listen to it and you don't get a reply, it demotivates you. It does demotivate me, and I cannot get it out of my head. I've had like a few EPs which I thought of were awesome. I sent them out to labels, and I saw plays but no downloads or replies. And then I started disliking the tracks myself, because I thought if the label doesn't like the track, it's probably not good enough, and I have to work on. But then I put out one of those tracks later myself, and it went on really well. So I think there is kind of a thing you could like argue for releasing yourself, that it, because your psychological motivation to keep on making new tracks and being positive about your own work is also really important. And now recently I started to go to other labels too, because I notice it's a really big catalyst for your career if you release on a big label. And I just signed 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, first track to a big label, which is coming out very soon. I cannot say still, but I'm really excited that it finally happened. But to all, I don't know, like to all beginning artists, just get your distro kit or any other thing and just release it out yourself. And you also keep all the money. That's also a thing for a lot of artists.
That's
there's a lot of complaints about like Spotify is paying not much, but if you get 100% cut of your distribution partner, it's like 0.0035 cents, which is like 3,500 euros per million streams.
Yeah.
And when YouTube was like doing monetization in 2011 and stuff, it's the same amount, and no one was complaining about YouTube. But I think a lot of the people that complain about Spotify should like look at their label and wonder why.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing too, is, you know, a lot of labels never ever pay anybody, even with this, even with middle to high stream counts, you might not ever see any money from that. And that's frustrating to an artist too. It's like, hey, I did all this work. Where's my, even if it's only $50, where's my $50, man?
Yeah, I seriously think if someone from the New York Times or anything like would do like a really thorough research on a lot of labels, it would be front page news, like how a lot, like the amount of money that just lays there and is not getting distributed fairly. I think it's a huge thing. It's a cowboy world, I think.
100%. 100%. So I always like to wrap things up by asking, what excites you about the future of dance music?
So that's a good question. What is a really exciting thing is that EDM used to be the main genre in dance.
Yeah.
And I didn't dislike EDM, but it was not my thing. Like I never like wanted to produce it or anything.
Yeah.
But now you see like the genre which I'm in is becoming bigger and bigger. You see techno is becoming really big.
Yeah.
You see house is becoming really big, and melodic techno is really becoming really big. And I'm also thinking because everything moves in waves, like right here in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands and in Europe, like hard techno is like the thing, like the harder the better. That used to be in the end of the 90s. It used to be the same, like hardcore was there, and it became like even harder, and you couldn't even hear the kicks anymore, and then it was over. And there were like TV commercials with hardcore stuff. So then trends came along, and I think it moves on a continuum. Like if it gets harder and harder, all the beautiful chords and melodies, they get left out because they just want power. And if you as a DJ are like good in the melodies and in the chords, and then you play track, people are like, what is this? I used to be like, everything was hard. And then, so my prediction is now it's getting harder and harder again. So this is not my wave, but the wave after.
Yes.
It's going to be more trendy again. And you already notice it a little bit in the underground with DJs like Yob Jobs and Kiki and stuff. They're all about trends.
Yeah.
But I think trance is having a comeback in its own way, because it never comes back exactly the same. And trance became awful at the end, like with all these terrible vocals and stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I also look forward to that. As much as I love to go hard, you know, a little melody is never a bad thing. And us coming back full circle is good for the scene, and it's good for everybody because it allows new artists to rise up.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us today. This has been really fun, and thank you.
No problem, no problem. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No. That's exactly what you're supposed to do here. What we're
Yeah.
trying to do is we want to tell artists, or allow artists to tell their own stories and their own words.
Oh yeah, I'm always segueing to different kinds of subjects during my talks. But
It's perfect. It's perfect.
all
You
right,
were great. You were really
all right.
fantastic.
All right, thank you so much, Alex.